The number of people who came for the prayer that day was very small. After the prayer, when everyone was going home, I lay down under one of the mosque fans thinking I would rest for a while. Suddenly a man from the neighborhood came to me. His name was Abdul Ghaffur. With deep sorrow he said, "Maulvi Sahib, my wife has passed away. Her janazah must be read. Will you lead the funeral prayer?" Hearing him, I first consoled him and said, "I am truly sorry for your wife's tragic death. May Allah forgive her. Has the time for the janazah been decided?" He said he wished to hold the janazah after Maghrib prayer and that he wanted me to lead it myself. I put my hand on Abdul Ghaffur's shoulder to comfort him and promised, "Don't worry, I will lead the janazah." At that moment, children who had come for instruction in the mosque began to show up, and Abdul Ghaffur went home. I felt deep sadness for his wife. He was only about 30-something, and his wife probably around 23 to 25. They had 2 small children. I felt sorry for the children because their mother had left so early. I quickly dismissed the children who had come to study. After Maghrib prayer, I left the mosque, leaving one boy behind, and told him to sit there for a while because I was going to attend a janazah. There was a graveyard in my neighborhood, and the janazah was to be held just outside it. When I arrived, many people were already there. After my arrival, the janazah was performed and the burial began. Some people left after the janazah. A few close relatives stayed in the graveyard with Abdul Ghaffur. I myself was deeply moved and worried for him, so I stayed by his side to give him courage. The grave had already been dug, and the body was being lowered into it. But as the body descended, the grave suddenly seemed to narrow, and strange noises began to come from inside it. Inside the grave there were many terrifying snakes and scorpions. They seemed poised to attack the corpse. Seeing this, the people present were frightened and panicked. Many fled while saying Astaghfirullah. Abdul Ghaffur looked first at the corpse, then at the grave with a desperate expression. He was in terrible distress. I too was stunned and alarmed. I had never seen anything like this. Darkness had fallen and the graveyard was very still. My hair stood on end, but I continued to recite prayers and stood there patiently. Now Abdul Ghaffur, overcome with worry, said, "Why is this happening? Even the gravedigger does not want to stay here. He is urging us to go. What is the meaning of this? Why are the graves narrowing? Why are snakes and scorpions appearing? Tell me." To encourage him, I said, "Come, let us try again and bury her together. I hope nothing will happen this time." But the same thing happened again. The gravedigger became frightened and left the graveyard. Only Abdul Ghaffur and I remained. Tears welled in Abdul Ghaffur's eyes. His lips trembled. He asked, "Maulvi Sahib, what is going on? Why does the grave reject my wife like this? Why are the snakes and scorpions coming?" I, as an imam, understood well the gravity of Allah's punishment. I was sure this was a terrifying warning from Allah. It was clear that the deceased had been attached to some sin for which this severe punishment had come upon her. Even in death, the earth would not accept her. I asked Abdul Ghaffur, "Did your wife do anything, any sin that might have caused this fate?" Seeing the confusion on my face, Abdul Ghaffur broke down crying and said between sobs, "Maulvi Sahib, my wife Nargis committed a great wrong in her life. Perhaps this is the result of that sin." His voice was full of despair and deep sorrow. I put my hand on Abdul Ghaffur's shoulder to urge him to tell the whole truth. "Be brave, Abdul Ghaffur. Tell me everything honestly. Only then can we bury her." It was already getting dark, and the time for Isha prayer was approaching. "Tell me now, the whole story so we can bury her and go back."
Abdul Ghaffur realized how serious the matter was. After a long sigh, he began, "This happened 6 years ago. Back then, my wife and I lived in another area. We were very happy. We had been married only 3 years and had 1 son. I had a good job and the 3 of us lived on my earnings. But my wife had a strong passion for jewelry and dressing up. She loved buying new clothes and adornments. Whenever she saw a well-dressed woman, she felt envy. She would often tell me, Abdul, you should do some business besides your job. Why are you only doing that job? How long will we live in need? I also want to do things. I would reassure her, telling her not to worry, that I would soon get a promotion and our income would rise. She would say that a higher salary alone wasn't enough. What would that really bring? She mentioned a friend who used to have a modest job, but then went to Dubai. Now money pours into his home, his wife wears jewelry, and their children go to well-known schools. They order Chinese food every day. She wanted that kind of life and told me to do something similar. I grew annoyed, thinking I might have to go abroad to earn that kind of money. So I gave my savings to an agent on the advice of friends, but the agent defrauded me and disappeared with the money. I had to quit my job and I had no other work. I lost the money and our situation began to worsen. Nargis reproached me day and night. I told her I had done my best, but she blamed my not being able to change our situation. Sooner or later, out of jealousy and longing for luxury, she began doing some domestic work at a household where a couple lived. They had no children. The woman of that house was ill and often bedridden, so Nargis cared for her and did the housework. From there, Nargis started telling me stories about them, that today the husband had bought his wife a suit worth 3,000 taka, or today he gifted his wife a gold ring. I would listen, surprised, because that woman seemed ill and yet their household did well. Nargis would say, smiling, that when she saw that woman wearing bracelets, a necklace and earrings all gold, she felt so envious. And here I had not even a single ring. I was sorry to hear this. Our days passed, but our prior peace disappeared. Distance grew between Nargis and me. We tried to stay apart because I blamed her for our changed circumstances and she blamed me. One day, the employer's wife suddenly died. We were deeply saddened by the news. Nargis, who was very close to her, was with the family and comforted the husband while he was at work. Nargis was in great distress because her job was now at risk. I tried to comfort her, saying, "Don't worry, Allah will open another way for you." But I knew there was another cause behind Nargis's trouble. When I discovered the cause, I too became very angry.
One evening, I hurried home unexpectedly. I was not feeling well, and Nargis did not know I had come. I found her wearing gold bangles, staring at them with a troubled look. I was astonished and asked, "Where did these bangles come from? Whose are they?" Hearing me, she fell into shock, and the bangles slipped from her hands. She quickly picked them up and, frightened, said, "Oh, when did you come?" I ignored her question and asked sharply, "Where did you get these bangles? From whom?" My voice and eyes expressed suspicion, and Nargis grew more frightened. Her hands and feet trembled. Suddenly, she covered her face and cried loudly, then said, "Abdum, don't suspect me. I will tell you the whole truth." Nargis then told me that her employer's wife had a lot of jewelry which she always wore, and that Nargis used to watch her with amazement and desire. She admitted that when her employer's wife died, she, driven by some madness and incited by Shaitan, had stolen those bangles from the deceased woman's belongings. Because the husband was grieving, she knew he would not notice the missing bangles. At first she was afraid, but later she became complacent. She even longed to wear them, but when she put them on, the dead woman's image would involuntarily appear before her, and she would be terrified and return the jewelry. Every night the dead woman appeared to her in dreams and accused her, "Nargis, what have you done to me? You betrayed me. You deceived my husband." This haunted her, and she woke up in fear, tormented by remorse. I tried to comfort Nargis and told her to confess to the employer so she might be forgiven. But Nargis trembled, saying, "I cannot. If I tell him, he will put me in jail. He is very strict and will not forgive small mistakes. Who will take care of you and the children if I go to jail?" She clung to my hand and wept. I was helpless and did not know how to relieve her guilt. I saw that from that day on, Nargis was not the same. Gradually she became listless. Her complexion faded. Dark circles formed under her eyes, and she seemed to be suffering from some serious affliction. She constantly had frightening dreams and appeared terrified whenever the topic of theft was mentioned. She never brought out those stolen bangles again. She stopped even mentioning them. In this state, a baby daughter was born in our house, but Nargis paid no attention to the child. She lived in the fire of remorse and fear. She began to see the dead woman even while alive, and would often scream, displaying strange gestures. I wanted to speak with the employer and tell the whole story, hoping that the employer might forgive Nargis and that she might find some relief. So without telling Nargis, I went to the employer's bungalow, but learned that the employer had gone abroad for 2 months. I was very disappointed because Nargis's condition kept getting worse and her screams broke my heart. I knew she had taken the bangles out of greed and in a moment of madness from a dead woman's possessions, a grave sin. The stolen bangles were still in our wardrobe, but Nargis herself was gone. She was consumed by remorse and died while tormented by that guilt. Now you have the whole story, Mr. Pahlavi. Maulvi Sahib. Tell me, what should I do? How can I bear this? Abdul Ghaffur cried again, and I was struck by a terrible fear. I could not imagine how a woman who committed such a sin would receive such a dreadful punishment. I told Abdul Ghaffur, do one thing. Bring those stolen bangles for home. I think they are related to the burial problem. He looked at me in surprise and asked, Maulvi Sahib, how could those bangles have anything to do with the burial? Do you mean that? I said, bring the bangles. Then I will explain everything to you. I will wait here. I sent him home and prayed and recited tasbih for Nargis's forgiveness. 20 to 25 minutes later, Abdul Ghaffur returned, trembling, holding the bangles. They were beautifully made of gold. Any woman's heart would melt seeing them. It was understandable why Nargis longed for them, but she chose the wrong path to fulfill her desire. She stole them from a dead woman's possessions and thereby sealed her fate. I told Abdul Ghaffur, put those bangles on Nargis's shroud. He obeyed. We placed the bangles inside her coffin and began to lower the body into the grave once more. This time, the grave accepted her. Nargis had committed a sin to satisfy her desire, and now that sin went with her. What will happen to her in the hereafter only Allah knows. We do not. We buried her and left the graveyard. Abdul Ghaffur was broken with grief because he had to endure double sorrow. First, the loss of his beloved wife. Second, that her last moments and burial were clouded by the shame of her sin. I advised him to be patient, accompanied him home, and returned to the mosque. Isha prayer had already ended, so I performed my prayer alone, and I prayed intensely for Nargis's forgiveness, knowing she had committed a sin whose punishment might endure until the day of judgment.